With Season 16 bringing forth a bunch of new items, builds for many champions have changed, and you may be confused as to what you should be purchasing on your main champ. So in today's video, we're going to be clearing everything up and providing you guys with the ultimate itemization guide for Season 16. We'll structure the video role by role and cover all the champions that have new builds that you will need to be playing. If the build for a champion has not changed at all from last season to now, then we're not going to cover it in the video because that would be a little redundant and take way too long. This video is going to be entirely focused on the new builds that have emerged for Season 16. And if by chance we end up missing a build or two, which is bound to happen due to so many variations that you can run, then let us know what you've been playing down in the comments below. And if you don't want to play fair in Season 16, listen up. We've just released the single most LP spiking course of the entire year, the Challenger Launch Course. All throughout December, our challengers have been spamming PvE to solve the meta before it even hits live servers. We've distilled hundreds of hours of testing into a single course. You'll learn everything you need to know in minutes, while everyone else stays confused for weeks. Skip the generic January YouTube clickbait and learn what actually matters. Click the link below to join SkillCapped instantly. You'll get the launch course today, plus our full Season 16 curriculum releasing throughout the month, all backed by our 5-division rank up guarantee when actively using our platform. And with that said, let's get into it. So starting off up in top lane, an old item that has been put back into the game for Season 16 is really good on a few different champs, and it's Hextech Gunblade. Gunblade costs 3,000 gold and provides you with 80 AP, 40 AD, 10% Omnivamp, and an active that slows and deals damage. Because of this mixed damage profile where you gain both AP and AD, it's a really nice pickup on Kayle. Not only does Kayle like Gunblade, but she also likes the new AP item Dusk and Dawn. Dusk and Dawn procs on hit effects twice after you use a spell, and then auto an opponent, so if you go Nashor's Tooth and then you use your E on an opponent, you're getting so much value out of this passive. Kayle E is going to instantly proc the Dusk and Dawn passive, so the synergy there is incredible. So then what are the different builds that Kayle can run? We did some testing in Practice Tool, and this is what we found. The two builds we think have the most viability on Kayle right now consist of a Gunblade Rush into Nashor's second and Rabadon's third, or a Nashor's Rush into Dusk and Dawn second and Rageblade third. The key difference between these builds is that the Gunblade build offers more mid-game burst strength, whereas the Dusk and Dawn build will scale better and provide stronger extended fight power once you complete Rageblade. So as we can see in the comparison clips here, a simple Q into auto attacking 6 times is dealing 1,288 total damage with Nashor's and Gunblade, while Dusk and Dawn with Nashor's is dealing 1,226. And this is without the Gunblade active proc, because if you throw that in, then it just heavily outdamages in burst scenarios. Jump ahead to 3 items though, and if you have Rageblade, you can see how the DPS is almost 100 higher than if you have Rabadon's. So if you're playing into a comp who's really squishy and you'll be able to burst them down easy, the Gunblade setup works great. If you're into a more bruiser or tank enemy comp though, where you will need extended fights to take them down, that's where Nashor's with Dusk and Dawn and Rageblade will shine. On the topic of Gunblade, it should really be no surprise that Akali is one of its best users. The build for Akali in Season 16 is super straightforward, and there's not much variation, as Gunblade Rush is what you should go for in every single game. Second item will be Shadow Flame, and then third item you have 2 main options, being Rabadon and Zhonya's, depending on if you value more offensive or defensive strength. Top lane Volibear's win rate has shot up about 2% for the start of Season 16, and it's because he's incredible with Dusk and Dawn. Bye-bye Rod of Ages and Cosmic Drive, and welcome Dusk and Dawn as Volibear's new rush item. Just look at the DPS difference in these clips when comparing Dusk and Dawn to Cosmic Drive. Dusk and Dawn DPS is consistently higher throughout, so in terms of pure damage output, Dusk and Dawn is superior to both Cosmic Drive and Rod of Ages. Now of course damage isn't everything, as Cosmic Drive does offer movement speed while Rod of Ages is providing more health and mana. However, based on the data so far, it's looking like the higher DPS from Dusk and Dawn is more valuable, as the item has a much higher win rate. For your second item on Volley, you actually have a few options. You can go for the usual Flicker Blades, however Nashor's Tooth and Riftmaker are also viable. It will probably take about a week or two until we know the exact best core for Volley, so experiment with those and see what you like best. It's super clear that Dusk and Dawn is the best rush right now, but second item is where things are a toss-up. Another top lane champ who really is liking Dusk and Dawn so far is Gwen. Gwen is performing great with the item as a rush, so all you're doing with your Gwen build for Season 16 is delaying the normal items you would get in Season 15 to make place for Dusk and Dawn in the rush spot. This means Nashor's Tooth and Riftmaker are to follow. So with Essence Reaver going back to being a Sheen item for Season 16, Gangplank has been loving it. Essence Reaver is currently the best rush for Gangplank, and Crit Plank is back in full force. The core that you'll want to be running on Gangplank consists of an Essence Reaver rush into the Collector second, while Infinity Edge and Lord Doms can be interchanged as third and fourth items. If games go really late, then the new lethality item Bastion Breaker is an option for Gangplank as a 5th pickup to enhance your tower taking power. If you like playing top lane Vayne, then there's a new build for Season 16 that you'll have to try. Instead of going on hit with Blade of the Ruined King and Rage Blade look to give Essence Reaver with Storm Razor a shot. The core is going to work really well for you specifically if you are going up against a more squishy enemy team comp, as the upfront burst power will be higher than if you go on hit. The new fighter item that's been added to the game called Endless Hunger isn't being played on too many champs so far, but one champion who looks promising with it is Renekton. Endless Hunger provides 60 AD, 5% Omnivamp, 20% Tenacity, and you gain ability haste that scales off your bonus AD. When you score a takedown, you get 15% Omnivamp for 3 seconds, so the extended skirmish power of the item is quite good. Renekton loves haste, tenacity, and Omnivamp, so there's definitely a place for Endless Hunger on the champ. Slotting Endless Hunger in as your third item looks to be the best way to implement it right now if you're planning on playing for side lane. If you want a team fight, then just going Sterix third will be the better option. Protoplasm Harness is the new health item added to the game for Season 16, and it's looking like a viable purchase on Mundo. The item provides 600 health, 15 haste, and a passive that upon taking damage that would reduce your health below 30%, causes you to gain max health for 5 seconds, then heal over the duration. While you're regenning that health, you gain 15% increased size, 10% movement speed, and 25% tenacity. And what's really nice about the item is that it's only 2,500 gold, so it's basically a cheap version of Sterix for Mundo. Third item is where it currently is working the best, as you want to go Warmogs and Heartsteel as your first 2 items, and then Protoplasm third. One champion who's absolutely thriving with Endless Hunger right now, who you may not really expect, is Fiora. The idea behind Endless on Fiora is that she just becomes completely unlocked in the 1v1. You're getting sustain from both Ravenous Hydra and Endless Hunger, so what you can do if you're side laning is take an even trade with the opponent, heal up to full health on the next wave, and then take full control of the side lane. The 1v2 strength of Fiora with Endless Hunger is just nuts, because when you get a kill with Endless, you then proc its passive to give you 15% Omnivamp for 8 seconds, and when you combine this with the fact that you will be healing from your R when you get that first kill, sustaining up and killing a second target is going to be so easy. Umbessa has one new item that she can look to incorporate into her build for Season 16, and it's Endless Hunger. As a champion who lives and dies by her cooldowns, the haste you get from Endless Hunger is really nice. The extended skirmish power of Umbessa shoots up a bunch with Endless Hunger completed, and it's something you should look to try as a third purchase. Eclipse Rush into Spear of Shojin second remains the standard, while Endless Hunger can be slotted in third. So with split pushing becoming way more powerful this season, there's a lot more of an incentive to build the new lethality item Bastion Breaker on Jace. Bastion Breaker as a third purchase is really going to amplify your side lane threat with Jace, because the passive on the item gives you bonus damage to towers after you've scored a kill. So it's a super snowbally option and can be slotted in third if you really want to exert your dominance in the side lane. Jax is going to be a super fascinating champion to keep track of over the next few weeks, because his builds are all over the place. Standard Jax with Trinity into Sundered Sky is still completely viable, but if you want to spice things up and go for an AP Jax setup, then for the first time there's actually a build that is rivaling Trinity Force analytically. In the past, we've seen AP Jax builds pop up, but they've always had terrible win rates. That's not the case right now, as Dusk and Dawn is performing insanely well in the rush slot on Jax. The reason Dusk and Dawn works great for Jax is because whenever you use an ability and then auto attack, you will apply on-hit effects twice. So this means Jax is able to W into auto and get his passive damage from R off in 2 attacks instead of the usual 3. Here's a comparison clip between Trinity Force and Dusk and Dawn, and we can see that if we E and then auto attack 7 times while using W twice, the damage is just 52 higher with Trinity Force. And something to consider as well is that the target dummy we are hitting actually has 80 armor and 80 magic resist, because in Practice Tool you can't add armor and magic resist separately to dummies. And knowing this, the enemy top you're going up against won't usually have 80 magic resist, as they're less likely to buy Merc Treads against you, so this would actually lead to Dusk and Dawn dealing more damage than Trinity Force. So with the damage being so similar, choosing your build based on what the enemy comp is likely to prioritize for defensive stats is a really good strategy. If your entire team is AD, let's say you have a Yasuo mid, Rengar jungle, and Caitlyn ADC, then that's where going Dusk and Dawn will be amazing. Vice versa though, if your whole team is AP, just go for Trinity Force. And if it's hard to tell what the enemy will want to build for defensive stats, then that's where the second item in each build path will help you make that decision. If you go for Dusk and Dawn, then you'll want to pick up Riftmaker second. And if you go Trinity Force, then Sundered Sky is your second purchase. Trinity with Sundered Sky is going to be the higher DPS 2-item core, as we can see from the comparison clips in the background. So in knowing this, then we can kind of narrow things down to the fact that Dusk and Dawn with Riftmaker will be best if your team is lacking magic damage. Otherwise, going Trinity with Sundered Sky is still great. Zehen has a new item that he can look to run for Season 16, as Endless Hunger as a later game pickup is viable. You still want your Trinity Force and Sundered Sky as core pickups, but Endless Hunger in the third slot is what's finding the most success. You're giving up some defensive power by going for Endless Hunger over a Death's Dance or Sterix, but your dueling threat in the 1v1 will be insane, so if you plan on living in the side lane throughout the mid to late game, then that's where Endless Hunger can be really good for you. Endless Hunger is looking like a pretty promising item for Aatrox so far. With the item currently outperforming everything else in the second item slot. Aatrox is a champion who loves haste and he loves Omnivamp, so it's not really a surprise to see the item finding success on him. The item combo of Sundered Sky and Endless Hunger is a really interesting one because you're getting so much sustain out of both items. So for Gwen jungle, the build is going to be the exact same as what you go for top lane with the Dusk and Dawn rush into Nashor second and Riftmaker third. Just so much consistent DPS power coming out of this core, and it turns Gwen into the ultimate skirmisher. Kha'Zix has a lot of build variety for Season 16 because of the mini rework to Umbral Glaive and the introduction of Bastion Breaker. Umbral Glaive as a rush is heavily outperforming Ghostblade, so we honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Umbral get nerfed soon. Just keep an eye on the patch notes, but as of right now, an Umbral rush into Ghostblade second is really powerful. Riot changed Umbral Glaive this season so that it's no longer a support item as it costs 2,800 gold but provides 60 AD, 15 haste, 15 lethality, the same revealing wards passive, and a new passive that gives you bonus true damage on your next attack after not being seen by enemies for at least 1 second. This passive is just absolutely nuts on Ka because he's able to stealth with his R in fights and get lots of these true damage procs off since he will be invisible for 1.25 seconds when he uses R. Bastion Breaker as a third purchase, if you really want to snowball a game out of control, is a great option. Whenever you score a takedown, the passive on Bastion will activate and provide you with bonus damage on your next attack against a turret. So if your team is running away with the game and you just want to be able to end as fast as possible, then grab Bastion in the third slot. If you guys watched our 26.1 tier list, then you'd already know that we rated Echo very highly due to his synergy with Dusk and Dawn, and with the patch now on live servers, we can confirm that he's insanely good with the item. The synergy is just way too insane for Echo because the passive from Dusk and Dawn allows Echo to proc his passive by simply using an EQ animation cancel combo, or by just Eing and auto-attacking once. And the build we theorized would be the most optimal for Echo currently has the highest win rate, as you want to rush Dusk and Dawn into Nashor's Tooth second and Rabadon's third. Right up there power-wise with Echo, and a huge winner from the Dusk and Dawn edition is Diana. So just like Echo, you want to rush Dusk and Dawn on Diana. The fact that you now have 3 really strong AP bruiser items just makes Diana feel so nice to play as you rush Dusk and Dawn going to Riftmaker second and Liandry's third. You can also delay your Riftmaker and Liandry's a bit if you think Zanya's as an earlier pickup will be more useful for you against the enemy comp. So if you're playing an AD Assassin jungler right now and are not building Umbral Glaive, then you're probably trolling. Talon is insanely good with Umbral, and it's outperforming everything as a rush item. So Umbral into Ghostblade and either Axiomark or Bastion Breaker is a really good setup. Bastion is actually winning more than anything else in Talon's third slot right now, so Umbral and Bastion Breaker as core items on Talon are looking really powerful. So it's way too early to say for certain because of the low sample size, but Stormrazor Kindred is performing very well. There's more incentive to build crit on Kindred for this season, with crit damage going up from 175 to 200%, so definitely try out Stormrazor and see if you like it. Stormrazor Rush into the Collector second and Infinity Edge third is the new crit build that has been seeing a little bit of play so far. Another jungler who can look to abuse the item combo of Umbral Glaive and Bastion Breaker is Zed. Umbral Rush into Voltaic second and Bastion third is winning a ton for Zed jungle right now. What makes the item combo so insane is that Umbral helps you clear vision so that you can assassinate from the Fog of War more easily, and then when you get that kill from Fog of War, you can transition the kill into a free tower because of the bonus damage from Bastion Breaker, so the tandem just works so well together. The one champion who's been performing the best with the new fighter item Endless Hunger is Hecarim. Hecarim jungle is really good with Endless Hunger slotted in as a second purchase. Reason being is that Hecarim loves ability haste and sustain, and Endless Hunger providing you that mass amount of Omnivamp when you get a takedown allows him to excel in extended fights. If you go Endless Hunger in combination with Death's Dance, then the healing potential that you have in extended fights is incredible. So far, what's working best for Hecarim's core is a Spear of Shojin Rush into Endless Hunger second and Death's Dance third. Now, of course, if the enemy team lacks significant physical damage, or if they are super heavy magic damage, then Death's Dance value drops because you won't benefit as much from the armor it provides, and therefore swapping to Maw or Black Cleaver are viable options. So Shaco is going to be yet another one of those AD Assassin junglers who can run the item combo of Umbral Glaive and Bastion Breaker. It's an Umbral Glaive Rush into Bastion Breaker second and Voltaic Cyclo Sword third that you'll want to try out. Nefiri is one of the few AD Assassin junglers who doesn't like Umbral Glaive, as Voltaic Rush is still the way to go for her. However, Bastion Breaker works really well as a second or third purchase. It all depends on how accelerated you are during the early game, because if you already have a couple kills and can look to close out the game fast, then go Bastion Breaker second. But let's say you're behind, then going for an item that's going to give you a stronger team fight like Edge of Night can be more valuable. Bastion is basically a win more item in the sense that if you're getting kills, then it just helps you transition those kills into towers really well. But if you're behind and just need as much raw power as possible to win a fight, the passive from Bastion is useless. So Kayn builds are all over the place for Season 16, but two new items being Endless Hunger and Bastion Breaker look to have potential on the champion. The thing is though, sample size is really low for both items so far, so it's difficult to say the optimal slot for each item and if they are actually better than the alternative items. So if you're a Kayn player, it's definitely worth experimenting with the items, but we aren't confident in giving you guys an exact optimal build to follow because we'd just be lying to you if we did that. So for Jace jungle is a similar outlook as top lane, with Bastion Breaker now being a viable purchase. Of course, with Jace jungle, you don't build Manamune, so you can slot in Bastion Breaker as early as your second purchase. Ghostblade Rush remains meta, but Bastion either second or third is working really well right now. As we mentioned before for other champs, whether you grab Bastion second or third depends on the current state of the game. If you are super snowballed already and just need as much tower taking power as possible to close the game out, go Bastion second. If the game is more even though, and you need as much teamfight strength as possible to sway the game in your team's favor, go for a lethality item with more raw teamfight strength, like Opportunity, and delay Bastion until third. There are two new items that Rengar can look to incorporate into his build for Season 16, and they consist of Umbral Glaive and Essence Reaver. So Umbral Glaive is just too good as a rush item right now, so you'll want to prioritize it first. In the second slot will be your Profane Hydra, and then third is where Essence Reaver works the best. The crazy thing about all three of these items is that they have passives or actives that provide an instant burst of damage. You have the true damage proc from Umbral, the active damage proc from Profane Hydra, and then the Sheen proc from Essence Reaver. So there's just a ton of upfront damage with this setup, which makes it perfect for assassination plays with Rengar's R. So moving on to the new mid lane builds now, one of the best AD assassins who you need to rush Umbral Glaive on is Qiyana. Qiyana is loving an Umbral Glaive rush into Profane Hydra as her core build, and then for your third item, you've got a few options. Bastion Breaker is a super nice pickup in games where you're accelerated and have no issues one-shotting your target, so more tower taking power from Bastion is really nice to have. In a more even game state, then opting for more damage with Serylda's Grudge will be the way to go. For your Talon mid lane, it's going to be very similar setup with Umbral Glaive as your rush item, but then second item will be Ghostblade, while Bastion Breaker can slot in third. If you're not super far ahead of the curve and need more teamfight impact, then you can opt for Edge of Night instead of Bastion Breaker. Mid lane Nefiri has a new build variation that she can run for Season 16, as Bastion Breaker in the third slot is working very well. You still want Voltaic, Cyclosword, and Opportunity as core purchases, but Bastion Breaker third can be super strong in those games where you are ahead and just want the ability to push down towers faster and close the game out. So mid lane Echo is going to be taking the exact same build that we covered for jungle, with Dusk and Dawn as the new addition for the rush, and then you'll take Nashor's to the second and Rabadon's third for a super lethal split push setup to take full advantage of the extra tower plates that have been added to the game. So at the time of making this video, the best performing rush item for Zed is actually Bastion Breaker. This does make a lot of sense for mid lane Zed as opposed to jungle, because for mid lane, if you end up getting an early kill in lane and are confident that you will be able to snowball, rushing Bastion and then being able to take down towers super fast after you score kills will allow you to absolutely run away with games. So a Bastion Breaker rush into Voltaic Cyclosword second and Serylda's Grudge third is a build to try in games where you are ahead early on. If you're behind or aren't confident in your ability to score solo kills in that specific matchup, then just going standard with Eclipse Rush instead of Bastion is completely fine. For your Gunblade users in mid lane, Akali is liking it a ton as her rush item, as there's nothing that's performing better right now. After grabbing Gunblade, a Shadow Flame second into Zanya's or Rabadon's third is the way to go. Now, a new build that pretty much everyone thought would be optimal for Katarina hasn't turned out that way so far, as Gunblade is being outperformed by Lichbane. We originally thought that Gunblade was going to have Lifesteal and Omnivamp included as stats on the item, but Riot shipped it so that it only has Omnivamp, which landed the item in a weaker spot than expected. Just going for the standard Lichbane into Shadow Flame on Cat is what's working best right now, but not by a super wide margin, so you definitely should think a little bit as to which build is best for the current game you're in. If the enemy team is more bruiser or tank champs, then the sustain from Gunblade will be of more value. If you're into a super squishy enemy comp though, and you can just one-shot them with ease, skipping Gunblade and rushing Lichbane is what you should consider. So far, Ryze is the only champion who's seeing good returns running Actualizer as a core purchase. It makes a lot of sense for Ryze because popping the active and giving yourself a big boost in DPS power will be super valuable when skirmishing in the later stages of the game. It's really only mana stacking champions that can take Actualizer, because when you pop the active, your spells cost double, so you have to go Rod of Ages into Archangels for Actualizer to work as a third purchase. Now, something that Strumpist has been doing on his Ryze, who's one of the best Ryze players, is that he's actually going double tier. So you can now build 2 tier items this season, and this means you can go for a 4-item core that consists of Rod of Ages, Archangels, Actualizer, and Winter's Approach. Winter's Approach is going to be that second tier item that you go towards, and it turns Ryze into a mega AP bruiser in the later stages of the game. The active on Actualizer not only increases your damage, but it increases the effectiveness of shields as well, so the fact that you get a shield from the upgraded versions of Archangels and Winter's Approach make this core build insanely good. We can't say for certain that this is the best Sylas build you can play for Season 16, but it is is one that you should keep track of on stat sites over the next few days if you are a Sylas player. So far, in its limited sample size, Hextech Gunblade has the highest win rate for any rush on Sylas. Now, of course, this could just be due to the smaller sample size, so we'll need to see how this progresses throughout the patch. But if you want to try out the build, it's a Gunblade rush into Riftmaker 2nd and Zanya's 3rd. With Gunblade and Riftmaker, you have a lot of Omnivamp, so the sustain coming out of Sylas in an extended fight is pretty nuts. Also, remember that Sylas has a 130% AD ratio on his passive damage, so the AD from Gunblade definitely doesn't go to waste. And then lastly, the active from Gunblade is super nice for Sylas because it makes how you approach picks with your E so much easier. You dive forward with your first E charge, slow the enemy with the active from Gunblade, and then it makes lining up the CC from Sylas E way easier. So one of the biggest winners for Season 16 due to the reintroduction of Stormrazor has been Aphelios. The item is now outclassing the Collector as Aphelios' first item. The main draw to Stormrazor over the Collector is the fact that its energized proc gives you 45% movement speed for 1.5 seconds. This is so massive for Aphelios being an ADC who lacks a gap closer, as he's able to reposition and kite around a lot easier in fights. So a Stormrazor rush into Infinity Edge 2nd and Lord Doms is the standard core you should try for Season 16. A champion who we thought would end up more niche with Fiend Hunter Bolts, but who's been finding really good success so far is Ashe. So Fiend Hunter Bolts is a Zeal item, and the passive gives you 30 haste for your R cooldown, and then 3 empowered auto attacks after you use your R. So much of Ashe's power in solo queue is from finding picks with her R, so Fiend Hunter giving her more opportunities and the ability to burst out a target faster is really nice. It's going to be a Kraken Slayer rush into Fiend Hunter 2nd and Infinity Edge 3rd as the core setup. There are 2 new Caitlyn builds that you can try for Season 16. The first is a more AD heavy setup where you can take First Strike for the Keystone rune and try to deal the most amount of upfront burst as possible. Rushing the Collector, going Infinity Edge 2nd, and then the new item Hex Optics C44 3rd is what you'll want to try. Hex Optics is really good value on Caitlyn because the item deals more damage the further away you are from opponents, and because of Kate's longer auto attack range, she benefits more than most ADCs. The second build is more attack speed oriented as you rush Stormrazor, go into Infinity Edge 2nd, and Fire Cannon 3rd. This one will be the safer setup as you have the move speed proc from Stormrazor and the bonus range from Fire Cannon, so if you're playing against a heavy dive comp and you want to be able to kite them easier, then this core will provide you with that benefit. Crit Corki is back for Season 16 as Trinity Force is no longer his best rush item. Essence Reaver, now back to being a Sheen item, is performing incredibly well on Corki, so it should be the item you are rushing in every game. As a matter of fact, the best Corki build right now does not involve Manamune either, as you are going all out early game burst with an ER rush into the Collector 2nd, while Infinity Edge or Lord Doms is slotted in 3rd. Essence Reaver Draven is back on the menu for Season 16, and it rivals Bloodthirster as his best rush option. If you really want to play a max damage snowbally Draven setup, then Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge and Lord Doms is the core to try. If you feel like the added survivability will be valuable to fend off against burst champs on the enemy team, then going Bloodthirster 2nd and delaying Infinity Edge until 3rd is a viable strategy as well. And if you're against a poke lane where having more sustain early on will be of great benefit, then you can still rush Bloodthirster too, but the main takeaway from this is that you should now be slotting in Essence Reaver either 1st or 2nd depending on the game. So Ezreal is back to building Essence Reaver for Season 16, and it's not really a shocker. Ezreal absolutely loves Sheen, so the fact Essence Reaver now provides Sheen again makes it a viable Ezreal item. Essence Reaver as your rush, Manamune 2nd, and then Spear of Shojin or Voltaic Cyclosword 3rd are the 2 main cores you will be playing. Spear if you want more survivability, and Voltaic if you want more burst damage against a heavier squishy comp. One of the best Stormrazor users so far, which is not much of a surprise, is Jhin. What's really odd though is that only 20% of Jhin players are rushing the item while it holds a 3% better win rate than the Collector. You're just so mobile when you have Stormrazor, which feels amazing for Jhin since he needs to be spot on with his positioning to succeed. So it's pretty clear that Stormrazor is the optimal rush item for Jhin right now, followed up by Infinity Edge 2nd and Rapid Fire Cannon 3rd. Jinx builds are going to be very similar to last season, but there is one new item you can consider in your build path, and it's Hex Optics C44. Hex Optics is just going to provide a lot of burst potential because of its 50 AD and passives that amp your damage based on how far away you are from your opponent. The only issue with the item is figuring out where it's best slotted into Jinx's build, as some players are finding success with it in the 3rd slot, but it does mean you have to delay your Hurricane purchase until 4th. Where we see Hex Optics being the best in that 3rd slot is if the enemy team is super squishy. You don't really need the attack speed and splash damage from Hurricane when up against more squishy dive champs, so just being able to burst them faster with Hex Optics will be really nice. So far, the Twitch build that has been finding the most success in solo queue involves the brand new item Fiend Hunter Bolt. And if you really want to spice things up, then Hex Optics C44 looks like it could have some viability as well, but the sample size is much lower, so we can't say for certain. A completely new build you can look to try though consists of a Hex Optics rush into Fiend Hunter Bolt 2nd. In theory, it makes a ton of sense as to why both items are great for Twitch, because Hex Optics gives you more damage damage the further you are from opponents, and with Twitch R, he's able to keep that range. Fiend Hunter providing the 30 haste for your R cooldown and 3 empowered attacks after you use R is also amazing for how Twitch wants to play. So that core is going to give you a really nice mid-game spike, but if you want to run the ultimate scaling build, then Yuntal with Infinity Edge and Fiend Hunter is the setup to play. So believe it or not, Crit is actually the best build for Vayne right now, so she's really strong with Essence Reaver and Storm Razor. It's an all-out max damage Q build, as you will get the Sheen proc from Essence Reaver and the Energized proc from Storm Razor, so that every Q you use will hit a bit harder than before. Build is definitely best into comps that are more squishy, as going for the standard on-hit Vayne is still viable for sure if the enemy comp is more tanky. Yunara has a new build that you should try for Season 16, as she's been loving the addition of Fiend Hunter bolts. It's not really rocket science to realize why Fiend Hunter is so good for Yunara, because she wants to be aggressive around her R cooldown, and the fact Fiend Hunter is all about amplifying the strength of your R, the item works great for her. So you'll just want to swap out Phantom Dancer for Fiend Hunter in the second item slot, but other than that, the rest of your build is the same, with Kraken Rush and Infinity Edge third. And then as for Zeri, she also really likes the new Fiend Hunter item, but is looking like Storm Razor is super underrated on her too. Because of the fact Zeri attacks so frequently, she's able to stack up the energized attack from Storm Razor really fast, so the item has more viability on her than most champs. With R popped and you getting constant Storm Razor movement speed procs in fights, the slipperiness of Zeri is absolutely insane. So look to try out a Storm Razor rush into Fiend Hunter second and Infinity Edge third as your core Zeri build for Season 16. So those are all the ADCs that have new builds for Season 16. If you're wondering why someone like Kai'Sa or Varus or Lucian wasn't featured, it's because they are still finding the most success with the same builds they ran last season. So we don't want to waste your time by covering old setups. So in order to save you guys a bit of time, instead of covering every single champion who's good with the new support item Bandle Pipes, we'll try to make things a bit more condensed. Reason being is that Bandle Pipes is super strong on a vast majority of melee supports, and the core build in which they run will be the same for most of them. So what does Bandle Pipes actually do though? Well, it gives you the exact same stats you find on Locket, but with 5 less armor and magic resist. Bandle Pipe actually costs 200 gold less than Locket though, at 2,000 gold, so if Riot were to nerf the item, we'd assume that they would just increase the cost by 200 to start. Its passive is what's making it so strong, as whenever you slow or immobilize a target, you gain 20% movement speed for yourself while granting you and your allies bonus attack speed. So it's just a really great passive to enable stronger all-in power, and here's a list of champions that you should be taking it on. So Bandle Pipes as a rush, followed by Locket second, will be a standard core build on Braum, Thresh, Blitzcrank, Leona, Renata Glask, and Nautilus. A few other champs that still want Bandle Pipes but have alternative options for second items include Alistar, Rel, Zillion, Taric, and Rakan. For Alistar, Rel, and Rakan, since they are really reliant on playing around their R cooldowns, they're loving the change Riot gave to Zeke's for Season 16, where you now gain 15 ability haste for your R cooldown. For this season, Bandle Pipes rush into Zeke's second is really good on those 3 champs. And then Taric and Zillion are going to run their own unique second items. Taric is liking Winter's Approach as his second purchase, and Zillion is slotting in Shurelya's. Predicting Sona to be a top tier support has been pretty spot on, as the champ has been loving the new item Whispering Circlet. It's the support version of Archangel's Staff, so you're getting a ton of mana, but for a lower cost of 2,250 gold, which makes it a phenomenal pickup on Sona. So far, the core working the best has you rushing Echoes of Helia and completing your Whispering Circlet second. Just don't forget to grab a tier on your first base to get that stacking. It's not just Sona who has been liking the addition of Whispering Circlet, as Seraphine is finding good success with it too. The one mistake a lot of players are making is rushing Whispering Circlet, but it's really not worth the rush, because you want your tier fully stacked in order to get the most value out of the item. So an Echoes of Helia rush into Whispering Circlet second is the core build to try on Seraphine for Season 16. Pyke has a new second item option for Season 16, as you still want to rush your Umbral Glaive, but then going into Bastion Breaker can be optimal depending on the game state. Are you snowballing super hard and you just want to have more tower taking power so you can close a game faster? Grab Bastion Breaker second then. If you are not snowballing and just want to ensure that your teamfight strength is as high as possible, then going into Ghostblade or Edge of Night second is still great too. There's a new Enchanter Senna build that's performing incredibly well, but not a ton of people are playing it yet, so we can't say for sure that it's the best Senna build for Season 16. The core revolves around an Echoes of Helia rush, while Whispering Circlet is your second purchase. So Whispering Circlet, being that tier support item, just allows for Senna to relentlessly spam out Qs in the mid to late game without a care as to whether she'll run out of mana or not. It's also super easy for Senna to stack her tier if she's up against a melee support, so that's where going for this Enchanter build will be most optimal. If your team already has plenty of damage and you're playing into a melee support, look to try out this Enchanter setup on Senna. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it, everyone. Those are all the new builds we have found so far that you will want to be playing for Season 16. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.